Okay, so the very first question is to describe one principle that I feel that I'm the best at. So I looked at the book on page 206 and 207. I got my book here. And kind of went through and looked at what each principle was and decided that for me, as I've always been told, the principle I believe I'm the best at is support your students along the way. I feel very strongly that it's very important for for the teacher to be there for support. Because even if the student is capable, if the teacher does not believe the student is capable, or the student does not have the support system, they're more likely not going to do as well. Hence why we focus so hard on trying to get parents involved and trying to make sure students are being encouraged to be included within the classroom, because everyone needs support. And I think that's something that, because I focused on that, and that's something that I had growing up, I had my parents as well as coaches and teachers who supported me, and that's kind of what's got me to where I am today. That's one of the values that is embodied within me. So it's something I'm definitely the best at. So to kind of explain how I support my students, um, I try to use different levels of support. One thing that I always start off doing is writing notes home to parents, letting the parents know, like, I'm their teacher and this is what I'm going to be doing, and this is what I have my expectations for students and things of that sort. So now the parents know up front, handwritten letters, okay, this teacher does care about my student as well as the students. I also send another handwritten letter towards the middle of the semester, kind of discussing how the student is doing, as well as grade reports and things of that sort that kind of embody, showing how the students are doing, and so that there's that support at home with the parents as well as that accountability level. So that's kind of a small support feature. As well as when you look in the book, it says that at the master teacher level, it states, proactively plan support to catch students before they fail, spends time anticipating and unpacking confusion as a normal part of the instructional process. So there's a couple different ways that I try to make sure this happens. Number one, I have multiple different social media sites, a Twitter, Facebook, and an Instagram that all can be used by the students. Because the students most likely are already using these sites, it's not a hassle to have to go to a random teacher website or anything like that. They can easily just follow the site that's already there and then use that as their way of staying involved within the classroom and using the classroom and the website as support. I use the Twitter for reminders about homework assignments, tests, study guides, extra credit, things of that sort. And so there's that catching students so that way they don't forget, and helping them try to remember how to stay on track. As well as Instagram picture and Facebook pictures of the homework assignments, study guides, videos on how to do the different homework assignments. So there's that extra help along with the flipped classroom aspect. There's still that extra help for the students, so that way they can excel. I also try to go through and see, just by looking at the pre-assessments and through the ticket out the doors, what are we messing up on, what's confusing the students, so that way we can spend a little extra time on that, and also push that through the following years to kind of show what the issues have been, so that way there's more emphasis on it, so I can catch those students who might make that mistake, as well as the helping out with, helping out and making sure that students who are behind are getting that extra help, but trying to bridge that gap and make sure they're not falling too far behind. So that kind of explains how I am on, I do think that supporting your students along the way is my strongest attribute, because I feel so strongly about it and feel that it's that important, that it's more of a natural becoming to me to make sure the students feel important. Now, the next question was choosing one aspect that not necessarily was your worst, but wasn't necessarily your best principle also. And so the one that I said was never work harder than your students. And then during our assignment, it says to go to page 214 in our book and kind of go through that as our action plan to see how we're going to fix this item that's not necessarily our best. And so the reason that I said that never work harder than your students is one of the things that I'm decent at but not the best at is because I do care so much. I do put forth a lot of work and extra work and trying to make sure that students are prepared and doing extra things. As I said, I do have the different pages, which of course is time consuming, trying to make sure. However, I do try to make sure the students are accountable, because if I'm taking the time to put together these websites, things of that sort, the students also have to take the time to look at the websites and put forth the information and try to take the information on their own time, so that way they can be successful. I also try to do different projects. For example, vocabulary projects where each student has their own vocabulary word and they have to teach me about the project. And that way I can use their work in the classroom and use it continuously. And then that way they're putting forth the work and they're helping with the teaching as well. So it's kind of a mix and a mingle between the two of us, making sure that we're both putting forth the same amount of effort into trying to make sure that they are successful. Because at the end of the day, if they don't care, if they're not trying to be successful, it's almost impossible for them to be successful if they don't want to be successful. So going through the action plan, the first question is, which one I'm going to work on. And as I said, it's never working harder than your students. The second question is, what is that principle? What does that mean in your own words? And to me, that means that both you yourself and the student are putting forth the same amount of effort to make sure that the student is successful. Because at the end of the day, of course, you are the teacher, you know more. So there's no way the student can put forth the same amount of teaching experience or learning experience. But the same amount of effort that you are putting into teaching the material, preparing for the material, is the same amount of effort that students should be putting in to learn the material and master the material. And so that's kind of my concept of trying to make sure that we're both on the same level. And I'm using different ways to make sure that we are getting on that same level. So, let me go turn to the page for the getting started tips. Give me 1 second. Of course, the page fell out. I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm here on the getting started, and so some of the tips that are listed is, in order to prevent working harder than students, clearly decide what is your work and what's your students' work, which I'm able to do that. Take back your work from the students by taking responsibility for teaching and supporting, and learn to tolerate the messiness of learning. Give back their work to students by shifting the responsibility for learning to students. Do not solve their problems. Help them acquire the tools they need to solve their problems on their own, and hold students accountable for doing the work by applying logical consequences. So, I'm going to ask you, what are your obstacles? What do you think? And I think for me, why I think this is a struggle is because I care so much. I don't want to necessarily see the students struggle. So it's a matter of me pulling back and not necessarily trying to solve problems and not trying to do the work for them, and guiding them, but letting them ask questions to help me guide them. Not saying, look in your book on this page and it tells you what to do, versus them coming and saying, well, what is this about? And I can give them a word. They can go look in the index and they can find the page that the information's on. So just trying to make sure I have that balance between the two. And making sure that I monitor your plan is just going to be a constant effort for myself to make sure that I am constantly paying attention to whether or not I am truly challenging the students, or am I babying the students? Am I holding them accountable to figure it out in themselves, or am I, saving them once they start to struggle or they get behind? So just making sure that I keep that balance. And for me, my completion date, of course, would be at the end of the semester, and trying to make those differences. And as well as, evaluating the students and seeing how they feel. Do they feel they worked hard, or do they feel that it was an easy course? And hard and easy isn't necessarily what I'm going for, as much as it is did they learn to learn? Are they still feeling held together? Am I cradling them, or are they really pushing themselves and putting themselves out there to be able to learn? So, thank you.